The German government is accusing Russia of blackmail over Kremlin demands that foreign buyers pay for Russian gas in rubles. As the value of Russia's currency dips due to sweeping Western sanctions, Vladimir Putin issued a decree yesterday threatening to cut off Europe's fuel supply if Moscow wasn't paid in rubles by today. Those demands quickly rejected by some of the top buyers of Russian gas, including Germany and France, who say they will continue to pay for their energy in euros. Earlier this week, 4 European countries said they were kicking out more than 40 Russian officials over national security threats, citing spying and influence operations as the reasons. The Wall Street Journal reports most of the Russian diplomats targeted were suspected to be intelligence officials. The move reportedly was part of a push to disrupt Russian intelligence networks in Europe and did not result from a specific threat. All of that, according to people familiar with the matter. Joining us now, former Republican Congressman from Texas, Will Hurd. He is a former CIA officer and author of the new book, American Reboot, an idealist's guide to getting big things done. Congressman, good morning. It's great to have you. Can't wait to dig into the book, but I do want to ask you about what's happening right now with Russia. As a former CIA officer, you write about that decade you spent stealing secrets and recruiting spies. What do you reckon with what's happening right now in terms of Vladimir Putin's power and what's happening around him? We've had these reports from the Pentagon and media that he is increasingly isolated, that he's being lied to by his own commanders and advisors who fear his reaction if he knows the truth about what's happening out there in Ukraine. What do you make of that? Is that more psyops than actual information?
Well, Willie, it's great to be on with you, and it's good to see you. Vladimir Putin is separated because he wants to be disconnected from these individuals. Yes, he's still getting reports and information and being briefed by his senior folks throughout his national security apparatus, but he's also collecting information on his own. Sometimes we forget that Vladimir Putin understands English. He's probably reading stuff in the Western press. This notion, is he being misinformed by his generals? I'm sure his generals are probably saying, hey, boss, tomorrow we're going to do better. But Vladimir Putin definitely knows things are going poorly, and that's why I think it's important now for the U.S. and the West to double down in our support to Ukraine, because the Ukrainians have momentum on their side, and if we're able to do things like provide them with those MiGs, there's been the debate on these 20 MiGs for weeks now, possibly months. This should have happened a long time ago. Making sure the Ukrainians have everything they need in order to win this war, because the longer this conflict continues, the more pressure you're going to see on European governments, especially Eastern European governments. If Western Europe is having the same problems that we're seeing at the pump here in America, that's going to create tension and potentially cause friction within the Western alliance. And so that's why double down on the Ukrainians. They've proven themselves. Give them all the tools that they need.
And there's certainly a distinction about Ukrainians trying to win the war rather than just not lose it, which is what's happened to this point. But let's talk a little bit of what next steps might be. There are some ongoing peace talks. No one's particularly hopeful that any sort of breakthrough will be reached today, let's say. But, you know, you've studied this. If you had to hazard a guess, and certainly predicting Putin is not an easy thing to do, what would his next avenues be? What would his tactics and strategy be for the war? And how can if at all, President Zelensky sell any sort of negotiated deal here?
Look, so Vladimir Putin has the ability to continue to unleash death and destruction on Ukraine. What he's done in Mariupol, he can do in other cities in Ukraine. You're going to see that continue to happen. This is his modus operandi in the Second Chechen War. It's the same modus operandi you saw in Syria. So you're going to see a continued death and destruction. What can we do? Being connected to the national security space for almost 2 decades, I've learned something simple. Be nice with nice guys and tough with tough guys. Make sure your friends love you and your enemies fear you. And what does that mean in this case? When you look at the number of countries that are not participating and working with us and our Western allies in the sanctions against Russia, the number is vast. It's almost all of Latin America, most of the Middle East, most countries in Asia. We need to make sure that we're increasing our diplomacy with those folks to grow our posse that is trying to help President Zelensky in Ukraine. And then we also need to make sure that we're giving all those weapons. I've said that already, but Vladimir Putin is not afraid of our support to the Ukrainians because we have shown a reticence to do that, and I think that's something that needs to change.
So, Congressman, let's turn to your book. It's called American Reboot. As many people know, you opted not to run for re-election in 2020. You've stepped away from Washington for a while after serving both in the CIA and serving, of course, in Congress. And you're sort of giving your diagnosis of what ails the country and offering some solutions. So it's a very big question. But we do feel so divided right now, maybe not as divided as it's portrayed from the loudest voices. But what is it going to take, in your estimation, to begin at least to stitch this thing back together?
Look, I think it starts with recognizing way more unites us than divides us as Americans. I saw that. I represented a district that was the size of Georgia, 29 counties, 2 time zones, 820 miles of the border. I was a black Republican representing a 71% Latino district. And when I crisscrossed that district, what did I hear? I hear most people care about putting food on their table, a roof over their head, and making sure that the people they love are healthy, happy, and safe. When we focus on those issues, you get rewarded. That's why I continued to win when I was in Congress, and nobody thought I was going to be able to win. Part of the problem is we pander to the extremes of our party, not the middle. 72% of Americans think that the country is on the wrong track. We don't have to continue the way we are currently, operating. There's a different way to do that. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book, American Reboot. In the CIA, the second lesson we learn is get off the X. When something's going down, the last place you want to be is on the X where it's going down. And so we can do something different, and I hope that's what people get from the book.
Congressman Hurd, I'm excited to read the book because of nuggets like this one. You describe being a CIA officer and doing a briefing for a CODEL for members of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. And the members, some of them were talking about wanting to leave to go rug shopping. This was in 2008. And there was a member who didn't understand basic sectarian differences and the battlefield dynamics. So my question is, you probably left that briefing fairly unimpressed. Were you more impressed with the caliber of your colleagues once you entered the House of Representatives and their level of seriousness?
Well, look, even you bringing up that story, I still get pissed. It's one of the reasons why I left a job I loved in order to run for Congress. My mom always said, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. And look, there were members that I got to work with that, wicked smart, wanted to help the country. Both sides of the aisle. John Katko from New York, a Republican. Pete Aguilar from California. And so one of the things that I was pretty shocked when I first got to Congress was the warmth of the relationships between members. That has changed a lot even in my short period of time. But one of the things we're going to start needing elected officials that understand these issues of the day. You have technology issues. The technological explosion we're going to see in the next 50 years is going to make the last 50 years look like we were monkeys playing in the dirt with sticks, right? This is so many things that we're going to have to deal with. Cybersecurity issues. Imagine if the Chinese government has the ability to do deep fakes today. Imagine how that would impact our elections and our news cycle and potentially our market. So these are some of the issues that we have to be ready for right now.
Mike Barnicle?
Congressman, your party, the Republican Party, has become unrecognizable to many people over the past 4 or 5 years. Yesterday, as Hakeem Jeffries just informed us, the House of Representatives voted to cap the cost of insulin at $35, which is an enormous boost for people who need insulin. It attracted only 12 Republican votes. What is the deal here? Is the Republican Party filled with people who don't need insulin, who are enormously healthy? 12 votes, that's all they could muster? What's going on?
Well, look, with that specific piece of legislation, I can't give you any insights. I don't know if there's things in there that the majority of Republicans thought were bad. If 12 voted for it, then I think that may not be the case. Here is the issue. What I want to see is the Republican Party actually has an opportunity to grow in some of the largest growing groups of voters. 2022, Republicans are going to take back the House. Almost everybody believes that. It's almost a fait accompli. Potentially potentially going to take back the Senate. Part of that is because of some of the problems and the incompetence of the Democratic Party. But we need to take this as an opportunity to have a vision on how we're going to address issues like gas prices, like rising costs of medicine, taking care of our seniors, taking care of our kids. When we have a vision and that's based on our values, that freedom leads to opportunity, opportunity leads to growth, and growth leads to progress, then we're going to be able to be successful for the long time. So that's the Republican Party that I want to see, and those are some of the things that I talk about in the book.
Before I let you go, Congressman, a lot of people looking to you and this sort of vision that you've laid out and see what your next move is. Do you think you'll get back into public service, running for office?
Thanks for the question, Willie. I've been fortunate to serve my country in a number of different ways, from the back alleys of dangerous places overseas when I was in the CIA to the halls of Congress right here in Washington, D.C. If I have an opportunity to serve my country again, I'll evaluate it. But right now, I'm excited to be able to put some of these ideas out and tell stories from a career that I've been blessed and lucky to have.
All right, we'll check in with you in a few months on that. The new book is American Reboot, an idealist guide to getting big things done. Former Congressman Will Hurd of Texas, thanks so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.